There's actually, I'll try and find it in a second, there's actually a purport where Srila Prabhupada talks about the instilling of the bhakti lata bija. And I'll find it, but in essence what he says is that receiving the bhakti lata means you receive the process of devotional service, and you also receive the guidance of how to practice that process of devotional service, and you also receive the faith and the inspiration to begin that process. So when all three of those things, or all of those things, are installed within a devotee's heart, then we can say the bhakti lata now has an opportunity to flourish. And then Shravana Kirtana Jale Koriye Sechan, that by the watering of hearing and chanting, that bhakti lata is then growing and growing. So my understanding is that Ado Shraddha, it's interesting when we say Ado Shraddha, quoting Rupa Goswami, that it begins with Shraddha. It's interesting that in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the second chapter of the Bhagavatam, where he's commentating on Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna, he actually says there are not 9 stages, there are, I think, 14 stages. And he actually says there are stages before Shraddha. And he says that's the instilling of the Bhakti Lata Bij. And to instill the Bhakti Lata Bij means to get the process, the rules and regulations, the guidance, and the faith and inspiration to then engage in the process. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining the journey. Ado shata tata sadhu sango ta bhajana kriya anartha nivritti shat tato nishta ruchis tata ata shaktis tata bhavas. Like that. So he's explaining that there are these 9 stages. As soon as one begins bhajana kriya and they're cultivating their bhakti lata bij through hearing and chanting, then it's said that at that moment anartha nivritti is activated. So immediately then the cleansing of the heart begins taking place. And what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains is that at every stage after anartha nivritti, there is a certain amount of purification that has taken place. I can't remember the exact terms. It's like partial, pervasive, absolute. It gives different. But the way it's explained in Madhurya Kadambini is that Nishta is a real transformational point for the devotee. Because at that point, most of anartha nivritti has been completed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, how do you know that you have reached the stage of Nishta? So he says there will be an absence of 4 things. I could be wrong on this, but I'll say what immediately comes to mind. He says, first thing is there's an absence of laya, which means laziness. Then he says apratipati, which means, anyway, I can't remember the exact terms, but he says there's an absence of things like laziness, there's an absence of distraction while doing bhakti angas, there's an absence of absorption in sense gratification. So he says once there's no trace of these things in your spiritual life, then you can understand you're in Nishta. Otherwise, we may be in japa time one day and have a good japa time and think, maybe I'm in Nishta. But there has to be a complete absence of these things. But even after Nishta, there is still traces of anarthas. Therefore, we hear of great saintly people slipping in their practice even at higher stages. But we can say that from Nishta is a real transformation point, because from there, sometimes it's explained that from Shraddha to Nishta is like an uphill struggle, very difficult. But then Nishta is like the peak, and then from there it's like a downhill, almost much more natural. Because after Nishta there's ruchi, there's taste, there's attachment, there's emotion, and from there prema. So I guess nishta would be a real turning point in a devotee's life. Therefore we say, Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. That by regular attendance at classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart is almost completely destroyed, and irrevocable service to the Supreme Lord is established as an irrevocable fact. So it seems as though that, from what the acharyas say, is a huge defining point in the life of a devotee, nishta.